Drugstore makeup is getting too expensive, too gimmicky, and it's losing its appeal. Recently, there's been a lot of discussion online about the decline of drugstore makeup in both its popularity and overall allure. And as a budget beauty content creator who has dedicated 99% of my channel to drugstore makeup since 2012, I felt like I needed to add my 2 cents to the mix. Kelly Gooch and Jen Phelps have both talked about this on their channels, and I'm gonna leave their video links in the description because they have some really thoughtful opinions on this topic. But I've gone through their comments as well as discussions happening on places like Reddit, and I wanted to share what I'm observing in terms of the overall attitude toward drugstore makeup right now, as well as the direction I think it's going in, and why I think we shouldn't give up on drugstore makeup quite yet. So this is gonna be a very chatty video, and it's going to be more about the commentary versus the makeup look that I'm doing today, but I will tag all the products both on the screen and in the description. Let's get into it because I have a lot to say, but first, if you're new here, hi, my name is Miranda. This channel is dedicated to budget beauty. If that sounds like your vibe, hit subscribe. I wanna start this video off with some interesting stats that have come out about drugstore makeup versus high-end. There have been several reports this year that show that high-end or prestige beauty sales are rising at a much higher rate than mass or drugstore brands. In fact, in the first half of 2024, mass makeup sales declined by 4%, and I want to speculate on why that is. One thing that I'm noticing people say online is that they're buying a lot less makeup than they used to. Now, let's not get that confused with beauty spending, because overall, that has been on an upward trajectory this year in the US and is forecasted to be rising 6% year over year. But what I mean is that people are sticking to a staple routine and holy grail products, and they don't mind paying a little bit more for them. In 2020, we saw a huge shift in makeup trends. From, I would say, 2015 to 19, we had a peak in the online makeup community, and I would say we were at max levels with the amount of makeup that was deemed normal to both wear and own. A full beat on a daily basis was not out of the ordinary. Cut creases to go to work or school, full coverage, everything, false lashes, etc. There's obviously always the exceptions to the rule, and there are people who are still going to love to do their makeup like this. I know I do from time to time, but trends definitely shifted more toward lighter and natural looks with more of an emphasis on complexion versus bold and colorful eye makeup looks. And I think people just need less product to rotate through to achieve these looks. And what I've seen in the comments is that people are much more comfortable splurging on a smaller, curated collection of products that really works for them. There was also a really interesting thread on Reddit where the author was saying they felt like they were a lot more intentional with their purchasing when they stuck to buying high-end makeup, because they would only buy things they knew they would use, and they would use the product all the way up before buying another one. So that was a pretty interesting perspective as well. Now here's the elephant in the room. We're all thinking it, so let's just say it. We've seen price raises from almost every single drugstore brand. There are some brands that have stayed more steady, like Wet n Wild and Essence. I have not seen huge jumps from them, but I am seeing drugstore makeup being priced very similarly to middle range brands like Tower 28 or Glossier. The price gap is closing a little bit between drugstore brands and mid-range to high-end brands, and I think that that could influence a shopper to just spend a little bit more money on the more expensive product that they've heard everyone raving about. Now, this is an uncommon occurrence, but it is something that's happening. Sometimes when you break down the cost of a drugstore makeup product per ounce, you're actually paying the same amount of money as a high-end product. For example, the NYX Can't Stop, Won't Stop concealer is $9.50 for 0.11 ounces, and that makes it $86.36 per ounce. Now, the Dior Backstage concealer is $32 for 0.37 of an ounce, which equals out to $86.48 per ounce. You are basically paying the same amount between NYX and Dior, especially with something like a concealer, which in theory you're purchasing over and over again. Now again, this is not super common, and I did have to comb through a lot of concealers to find this example, but it is something to keep in mind when prices at the drugstore go up, but the amount of product you get doesn't, or it might even decrease. But just like everything else in our lives, from groceries to concert tickets, makeup is more expensive than it was 5 or even 2 years ago. Now, one thing you'll find a lot with drugstore makeup that you do not normally see with high-end brands is that prices range a lot between retailers. Compare Ulta prices to Target, for example, for the exact same item, and you might see a pretty significant difference. And you don't see that with brands like Tarte, for example. Their Lights Camera Lashes Mascara is $27 at Sephora, it's $27 at Target, it's $27 at Macy's, and it's $27 on their own website. I can definitely see there being comfort in that reliability. I noticed that a lot of the people in the comments that said that they only buy high-end makeup now say that they only buy it when it's on sale. And it has become so common for high-end brands to hold sales. Like if you sign up for their email list, even outside of Sephora sale or Ulta 21 Days of Beauty sale, the brand itself will probably send you like a 15 to 20% off coupon practically on a monthly basis. Now, on the flip side of this, drugstores also have regular sales and a lot of coupons you can use to save money if you're willing to put in the work. Typically, you have to have an account with them and download the store's app. Log into the app, find the coupon, load it onto your card. And let me tell you, I do this every time because I love a good deal. I am all about those 40% off CVS coupons, especially because you can stack them with the dollar off coupons. Like, it makes a difference. You can end up paying less than half price. But it is 2024, and the in-store drugstore makeup purchasing experience hasn't gotten that much better than it was in like 2011. We largely still don't have testers for drugstore makeup. In fact, rude shoppers open their own testers and try products out and then put them back on the shelves, which is gross and infuriating. Please don't do that. So are you willing to spend an extra couple dollars to get your correct shade the first time with a high-end product? Some people are. But to counter that, most stores that sell drugstore makeup will take returns on drugstore makeup as long as you follow their return policy window. I've made drugstore makeup returns at Ulta, Walgreens, Walmart, and Target when I've bought the wrong foundation shade, and I haven't had any issue. I think people just feel weird doing this with cheaper products versus at Sephora. I don't know why though, I don't. And typically in those cases, I do get it right on the second try. Now, on that note, I definitely have to address this. Drugstores often do not provide as wide of shade ranges as high-end makeup retailers do, especially in person. But I think that this is a problem both from the brand perspective and the retailer perspective, because there are some drugstore foundation ranges that are really good. Like the L'Oreal Infallible foundation has 40 shades, but if I were to go into any local drugstore near me, there aren't going to be 40 options for me to choose from. But on the other hand, you have brands like Profusion, who just released their new Skin Perfector foundation, and the deep shade is lighter than the darkest model that they used for swatches. So like, it's definitely a two-part problem, and it's pervasive, though not exclusive to drugstore brands. Then we also have the issue of makeup being locked up. At least here in the US, it's becoming more and more common for the makeup to be stored behind a glass case. You have to get an employee or press a button to call an employee over and unlock it for you. And that has definitely taken away from browsing drugstore makeup. Like, I'm not going in and picking stuff up just because I'm curious and kind of like going through each section anymore, because I can't. I go in knowing what I'm looking for. I call them to unlock it. They unlock the case. I grab it, they lock up the case, and I check out. So in-store discovery has become much harder, if not impossible, with these new cases around drugstore makeup in the US. Something that Jen Phelps touched on in her video, but I want to expand on, aside from all of the products being released that are very clearly dupes of high-end makeup, I think that we're also getting a lot of overly trendy makeup at the drugstore recently. Jen talked a lot about how high-end brands are creating product trends that then drugstore brands like rush to emulate. And we end up with the same type of product from nearly every brand without a lot of differences between all of them. And that gets super repetitive. For example, we got bronzing drops from nearly everyone this year. And I tried like 2 to 3, and there wasn't a huge difference between them. It was just that I preferred the shades that Milani offered, so those were the ones that I kind of used regularly. And to take that a step further though, I feel like there are a lot of drugstore makeup products being released with social media in mind. And what I mean by that is like the brands are developing these products thinking about what they'll look like in a video when influencers show them off. A couple videos ago, I talked about pH reaction color changing makeup, and that is the perfect example. It was cool 2 years ago. Now it's lame. In fact, I remember products like these from when I was a kid, and then for some reason, they started getting popular a couple years ago. And let me tell you, I fell for it. And I actually found some products that I thought were really pretty, like the Winky Lux Flower Balm and then the Hard Candy Selfie Blush. I actually really liked the finish of that. I tried them, I filmed with them, I had the OMG reaction. But here's the thing. If the pH of my skin isn't changing, then every other new pH reaction makeup release is gonna look exactly the same. Why are we still getting reaction videos of these types of products on TikTok? You knew it was gonna be that bright pink. We all knew it was gonna be that bright pink. Another example that drove me absolutely bonkers recently, the Lottie London Glitter Switch lipstick. I tried the limited edition version that just came out with their Halloween collection. And basically, this is a matte liquid lipstick that you apply, let dry, and then when you press your lips together, it's supposed to reveal a glittery layer that was hidden. Not only was this a super drying formula that was not comfortable at all, but when I pressed my lips together, I barely got any glitter effect, and because it's a very dry formula, it actually made the lipstick patchy when I pressed my lips together, and like it started peeling up. Now, to be very clear, it is not only drugstore brands that are guilty of this. I'm just seeing a lot of this from newer drugstore makeup releases. Also, dupes are taking over the drugstore. And both Jen and Kelly really hit the nail on the head about why this is annoying. So again, please check out their videos. Here's the thing, even though I am bored of nearly every new release being a dupe, I would rather buy the dupe than the high-end product, so I'm not entirely mad about it. If the dupe performs well on me, I'm gonna choose the cheaper option every time. That's just me. Now, you didn't think that this whole video was gonna be me disparaging drugstore makeup, did you? Look, I think that it's healthy to criticize brands and products from the perspective of a conscious consumer, but at the end of the day, I will still be a drugstore makeup shopper, and here's why. When you buy high-end makeup, part of that price markup is solely for the brand name, period. Baked into that price is the perception of higher quality or value, regardless of whether or not you're actually getting that. Now, will you find better formulas from high-end makeup? Sometimes, for sure. But just because something is high-end does not automatically make it better. Just like if something sold at the drugstore doesn't automatically make it lesser quality. It hasn't been that way for years. Also baked into that price is often prettier and sometimes better packaging. Now, I do want sturdy packaging either way, but let me tell you, it's not guaranteed from high end either. There was one time where I had a $47 jar of Laura Mercier powder break on me, and I threw that powder into a Ziploc bag because it was expensive and beautiful and I wasn't gonna waste it, but I was pretty dang bummed that the jar just split open. But at the drugstore, as long as the packaging is sturdy, the prettiness of it is not super high on my personal priority list when making a purchasing decision. And honestly, I think this might be why I don't get as hyped up as other people for limited edition makeup collabs, because there are so many of them that are all packaging and the actual product is not that exciting. The next reason why I'm gonna be staying a drugstore shopper is that the drugstore brands are the ones that own most of the high-end brands that you can find in Sephora or Ulta. And because of this, they end up duping themselves a lot, whether or not it's obvious. And sometimes the formulas are so close together that they are practically the same product. And we saw this with the Maybelline Vinyl Ink lipsticks versus the Urban Decay Lip Bonds, the ones where you shake it, it's a liquid lipstick, and they stay shiny. First of all, even the packaging was so similar similar. The Maybelline came in plastic and the Urban Decay one was more of like a metal casing, but the shape and size were identical. But when I reviewed these, I broke down the ingredients and there were 21 common ingredients between the two. And the main differences were that the Maybelline ones did include fragrance and alcohol, and then they had different like nourishing ingredients. It was sunflower seed oil in Urban Decay versus aloe with the Maybelline, but they performed exactly the same. And funny enough, the Maybelline version came out first, but they were released within like 2 months of each other. So I can only speculate that these were being developed at the same time or together. Again, speculation, but like they were too similar, like they were beyond dupes. Now, I've heard a lot of opinions that while drugstore makeup prices are rising, the quality is decreasing, and that is where I have to wholeheartedly disagree. As someone who has used majority drugstore makeup in my daily routine since 2011, these brands are at an all-time high with their quality, let's be real. And if I find something at the drugstore that works for me, I'm not necessarily compelled to explore the high-end options. Now, this is a really important point that I feel like is getting left out of these conversations, but high-end makeup prices are rising too. And this should not be written off. For example, Tarte mascara went up from $23 to $27 since 2020. The Hangover RX spray from Too Faced went up from $32 to $38. And the Urban Decay Primer Potion went up from $24 to $28. So instead of seeing the price gap between drugstore makeup and high-end makeup closing, I'm seeing it more as shifting up, and the difference is still significant enough for me to want to shop drugstore first. I do think that things start to get a little murkier when you start to consider these brands that are priced under most high-end, but definitely above what we consider normal for drugstore. And I'm talking about brands like Tower 28, About Face, Florence by Mills, Glossier, REM Beauty. They're sort of like entry-level prestige, but still very much within reach if you're getting used to these new drugstore prices. And because that jump isn't that significant, I would find these brands to fit within my budget if I find something that I really like. There is a pricing psychology term called left digit bias, and this is why we see so many prices like $9.99 and $19.99, because humans place the most emphasis on the leftmost digit when we look at prices, and we often round down. So we see $9.99 as less than $10 and $19.99 as less than $20. So I do wonder, when we're looking at products from some of these like mid-range beauty brands that are becoming so popular now, if the price jump doesn't seem as significant to us because of that psychology. For example, Physicians Formula liquid eyeliner is anywhere between $10 and $14 depending on where you get it, and the REM Beauty liquid liner is $19. So I'm wondering if people are kind of categorizing them the same because they're just seeing both options as between $10 and $20. But for those who are really trying to budget, that difference does add up. Now, I already mentioned that I personally feel that drugstore makeup quality has gone up in recent years, and for me that does help justify the raising prices a little bit. But I would also love to see more innovation at the drugstore and more unique releases. And I don't mean trendy, I just mean something new, something fresh. Like, even though e.l.f. has definitely become a little bit of a dupe brand recently, they really did hit it out of the park with this Soft Glam Satin Foundation. It's $8. It looks beautiful and smooth on the skin. It lasts really long, and it wasn't like immediately hyped up as a dupe of anything. This was excellent. I was genuinely excited about this. Frankly, those Maybelline Vinyl Ink lipsticks that I mentioned earlier, those were very innovative, and they did come first, so they were an original release at the time. They're genuinely some of my favorite, if not my favorite, drugstore liquid lipsticks right now. Even the new NYX Buttermelt blushes, those are probably the most pigmented yet smooth and blendable powder blushes I have ever tried in my life. I think that drugstore makeup brands are gonna need to focus more on these innovative core collection products in order to earn back the naysayers as well as keep their target demographic interested. I still truly believe that there's so much drugstore makeup that is on par with high-end at a lower cost. And I am on the PR lists for these high-end brands. I get Urban Decay, YSL, Lancome, It Cosmetics, and usually it's because I want to be able to actually try products that I recommend during like Ulta 21 Days of Beauty and Black Friday and whatnot. But also it's so that I actually know what the high-end quality is, so I can tell you when a drugstore product is actually as good as high-end. All this to say, despite the charts and the reports and the comments and the threads, the drugstore is still putting out some great makeup releases, and I do still plan on focusing my content mostly around these brands. However, I am inclined to maybe work in some of these mid-range brands that I've mentioned throughout this video, especially if you all feel like they are within reach in this current landscape. So now I'd like to pass the conversation off to you and continue it together in the comments, because especially if you're subscribed to me, but even if I just showed up in your YouTube recommendations, you probably have an interest in drugstore makeup or budget-friendly makeup, whatever that means to you. And I'd love to know your thoughts on the direction drugstore makeup is moving, what you'd like to see more of or less of. Do you primarily shop drugstore makeup, or do you find yourself exploring more of these mid-range or even high-end brands? Let me know in the comments. I know this video is a lot different than what I normally make, but I obviously had a lot of thoughts and feelings to share. So thank you for making it to the end with me. If you want to keep hanging out, join me over in this video next. I'll see you over there. Bye.